Hey folks, before we dive in, big news. I've officially joined forces with the Lions of Liberty Network. And don't worry, you'll still catch the Brian Nichols Show right here every Monday and Friday, but now I'm also dropping a brand new episode every Thursday exclusively on the Lions of Liberty RSS feeds and channels. And then every other week, join me, Brian McWilliams, John Odermatt, and Lou Perez for our brand new roundtable, Politics, where we break down the week's political bloodsuckers and try to make some sense and jokes of the madness. All right, and with that, let's get on to today's episode of the Brian Nichols Show. So let's talk more about not just Poland in this case, but other countries that you would say maybe same church, different pew, right? Like countries that they're doing the right things, much like you're identifying Poland as doing the right things today. What would those other countries look like? And I guess what are things that the American populace can look to and say, oh yeah, I get that.
Right. Well, I'd say Poland, the Baltic states. I'd look to the Czech Republic as well. I mean, I think Eastern and Central Europe, and this one gets personal for me because my grandmother was born in Poland. She fled communist Poland in the early 60s. So I know from the stories from her that passion in people that lived in this under communism. And that's, I think, why we see our Central and Eastern European allies taking this moment so seriously.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode, yes, of the Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered, yes, by our amazing studio sponsor, Cardio Miracle, which is, in fact, the best heart health supplement in the world. So if you want to learn more about how to lower your blood pressure, lower your resting heart rate while improving your pump at the gym, stick around. We're going to talk about that more later in today's episode. But first, Poland. They are a model U.S. ally, and gosh darn it, it's time we start acting like it. That is, of course, the article we're going to be discussing today from Real Clear World. And joining us today is the author of said article, Ed Tarnowski. Ed, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you here, man. Before we dig into, yes, this article over at Real Clear World, do us a favor, Ed. Introduce yourself to the Brian Nichols Show audience.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, my name is Ed Tarnowski. My day job is being a policy and advocacy director and host of the State of Choice podcast over at Ed Choice. I'm also a Young Voices contributor, where I write on a varying number of topics, including foreign policy.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, let's dig right into your article here today. Poland is a model U.S. ally. Let's act like it. This is obviously during the conversation we're having right now at the heat of the Ukraine-Russian war. What's America's role in this war? Then we have the rising tensions over in Iran. We have the whole Israel, Gaza Strip, Palestinian, Hamas debacle taking place down there. Oh, yeah, and by the way, China is being China and doing China things over in the Eastern Pacific. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the world, Ed, to say the least. And yet, when you look at the American political conversation, it seems like a lot of folks they get stuck more on, what we wish an ally would look like versus actually looking at countries who are already out there, who I would dare say are allies, and doing things right. And this is the crux of your article today. Let's look at Poland as not just a great ally, but a model of what we should expect from other allies. With that being said, Ed, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Absolutely. And all those things you said are going on in the world, those are all great reasons to have strong allies and why it's important that we have friends. But yeah, what happened essentially a little while ago, Elon Musk was on X, as he does, posting, and he was getting into a conversation in the replies with someone about how Starlink is so important to the Ukrainian army. And he implied that if he were to shut it off, he said it was the backbone of the Ukrainian army. He said if he shut it off, he could cripple them or something of that nature. And this caught the attention of the Polish foreign minister, and he kind of made a comment saying like, hey, we contribute to Ukraine's access to Starlink, the funding for it. If Starlink ever proves unreliable, we'll have to look at other sources. And I think what it is I have a lot of respect for Elon Musk. I think a lot of what he's doing at Doge is really in the spirit of what's being done at Doge is really important. We need to be cutting government. His work at Starlink and Tesla are vital to national security. However, sometimes I think he doesn't realize the weight of his words. I think foreign leaders see him as a very, very influential and close advisor, even if unofficial, to the president. So when he says something like that, they take it very seriously, and I think that made them a little nervous. And we want to reassure our strongest allies, not pick fights with them on Twitter, because Elon then responded and made a comment about him being a little man, and something of the effect of like they contribute only a small amount. And again, we just don't need to be picking these fights on Twitter with our close allies, essentially.
I'm sorry, it's not funny. I think back to the old expression people used to say, "Get off the internet. Twitter's not real life." I think it might be. I don't know. I'm just saying, but yeah, no, Ed, you're definitely hitting on something here, because when you look at not just how America has been approaching foreign policy, and this isn't necessarily just, a thing with the Trump administration. Let's go back to the Biden administration. Trump won back between 2016 and 2020. It never really felt like we kind of, okay, here's a silly analogy, right? Like how old are you, Ed? I'm sorry.
27.
27. All right. So let's just say, you and I, we're younger again. We're in our teens, right? And we're trying to figure out the whole dating thing, right? Before you go and you start, asking any girl that you see, hey, you want to go to a dance, or hey, you want to go to the movies or dinner? I don't know, but I haven't dated in a long time. So it's been, it's very alien to me. So hopefully that we stay that route. But with that being said, right, like you don't just go out and start asking anybody. You have in your mind what the right girl for you looks like, or the right relationship looks like, right? And yet it doesn't really feel like we've done that here in America. Or if we have, maybe we're not doing it in the right way, or, we're saying we want thing, but then, we go a different direction. We go towards the crazy, right? So like, this is where I'm at, is saying first, we have to first identify who it is we actually want to ally ourselves with. So what was it about Poland that you looked at and said, these guys are doing it right, and shame on us for not paying attention to that?
Right. And I think the important thing here is consistent. We should be consistent because there are many reasons to be frustrated with some of our allies who are not so model allies. And so, for example, there are certain NATO allies who are not paying what they're supposed to be paying, and the NATO defense requirement. Poland is paying double that. There is the highest of any NATO member by percentage, and they're on track to reach nearly 5% by the end of this year of GDP.
That sounds significant. Wow.
Right, and they've announced they're going to increase the size of their army from 200,000 to 500,000, and require all men in the country to receive military training. So what we're looking at here is one of the biggest critiques, as I mentioned, is okay, a lot of our allies aren't stepping up, but Poland is stepping up. And it's just as important to highlight the countries that are stepping up to the plate, being a strong ally, taking this moment seriously for our collective defense and for their defense. It's just as important to highlight what a model ally ought to be, as calling out the ones who need to improve. So again, we should be consistent here. Criticize the ones who are worth the criticism of, or at least criticize on the right thing. But we don't need to be antagonizing Poland when they're truly one of our strongest allies.
So let's talk more about not just Poland in this case, but other countries that you would say maybe same church, different pew, right? Like countries that they're doing the right things, much like you're identifying Poland as doing the right things today. What would those other countries look like? And I guess what are things that the American populace can look to and say, oh yeah, I get that.
Right. Well, I'd say Poland, the Baltic states. I'd look to the Czech Republic as well. I mean, I think Eastern and Central Europe, and this one gets personal for me because my grandmother was born in Poland. She fled communist Poland in the early 60s. So I know from the stories from her that passion in people that lived in this under communism. And that's, I think, why we see our Central and Eastern European allies taking this moment so seriously. You see them, like, again, Poland they have taken on, without question, being the center of the flow of Western aid to Ukraine. The Baltics, I think Estonia was spending it was like 14% at one point of its military budget sending aid to Ukraine. So there are many allies to criticize who haven't stepped up to the plate, but we see most of our Central and Eastern European allies truly stepping up, paying what they should be, leading the conversation. They spoke clear-eyed about Russia long before Germany did, for example. I mean, they've been just like we, as the Americans, we've been yelling at Germany for years to stop using Russian gas. The Eastern and Central Europeans were worried about this as well, long before the war started. And I think they've just been truly vindicated, and they've also proven they've matched their rhetoric with action. And that's what we should look for in allies.
All right, now I get to play devil's advocate because I'm the host. That's my job.
That's right.
Ed, let's talk about the flip side of the coin, right? And let's go back to sorry, it just made me think of a joke. You know, it's the guy saying, hey, you know, he's in World War I. He goes, hey, is this World War I or World War II? What? It's just the World War. You'll see later, right? Let's go back to World War I, or otherwise in 1914 known as the World War. We saw one of the main problems to be the catalyst to said World War was these things called entangling alliances, right? Archduke Franz Ferdinand gets assassinated by an assassin's bullet, and then all of a sudden the entire continent of Europe is at each other's throats, and somehow we get looped into that as well. Thanks, Woodrow Wilson. Gotta love that. But with that being said, Ed, right, is there a concern of America building these relationships with so many countries and allying ourselves with you know, I wouldn't say countries that are war ready, but like they're definitely on the brink, right? Is that putting America into positions of danger, you would say, when we're allying ourselves with folks who are quite literally on the edge of the battlefields as they present themselves today? Today, we spent this episode talking about deterrence, how the best way to keep peace is by being strong enough that nobody dares mess with you. Well, the same goes for your health. And the best defense, a strong heart. And that's why I've been using Cardio Miracle for the last 2 years. And I'll tell you, I've never felt more confident in my own body's defenses. Because I'm talking about lowering my blood pressure, lowering resting heart rates, better pumps at the gym, and more energy, better recovery, you know, the works. And I want you to think of Cardio Miracle like an actual good NATO, but for your cardiovascular system. Nitric oxide production, immune support, anti-inflammatory power. It's the ultimate alliance of heart health. And listen, you don't need a summit or a treaty to get started. Just scan that little QR code over my shoulder or head to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout for 15% off your order. One more time, that's cardiomiracle.com, code TBNS for 15% off. Don't wait until there's a crisis. Invest in your body's strength today. Cardio Miracle. It's peace through strength, but for your heart. And now, let's get back to the show.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. And I will say, I think the NATO alliance, the history of it speaks for itself. In the past 70 years, we've largely seen peace on the continent in Europe up until Russia invaded Ukraine. It's done a phenomenal job at keeping peace. And I think it's a little different because many of the alliances that we saw in World War I were inconsistent, not ideologically to necessarily together. NATO is this purpose that you have to be a democracy, for example. You have to align with Western values. And so far, it has worked. And the idea, and remember that NATO is only a defensive alliance. So its purpose is deterrence. We want our adversaries to see that we're so strong that war never comes. That's the idea behind collective defense, Reagan's peace through strength doctrine. Build us up to be so strong that no one ever screws with us, essentially. And I think the history of it speaks for itself. And I know times are changing, and we have seen that Russia invading Ukraine really sent shockwaves. But I think the best thing we can do, and to keep peace, to make sure that we don't get dragged into future wars, is keep that deterrence up. And that's why we want to look for, because Poland and the Baltics aren't arming to invade Russia. They're arming to deter Russia from ever thinking about invading them, or to be prepared if, God forbid, that ever happens. They're not looking to antagonize Russia. It's purely defensive actions.
Interesting. So let's just say, you know, Ed, I give you this magic phone, and this magic phone actually connects right to that big red phone on Trump's desk, right? in the Oval Office. So you get to pick up the phone, and I'm surprised. Donald Trump said he wanted to hear specifically from you, Ed, in terms of your foreign policy recommendations and prescriptions. He read your article at Real Clear World. And he said, yeah, this Ed Tarnowski guy, he's got to figure it out. So Ed, you're on the phone with the president. What are the strategic recommendations you would make in terms of not just allying ourselves with countries like Poland, but just, if you had to give them some suggestions, not just, and let's be beyond Europe, right? Any other areas across the globe that you're like, hey, President Trump, pay attention to these areas, these countries. These would be really good folks to ally ourselves with as well.
Right. And I really do sympathize with the goal, at least, of wanting to bring peace in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, in the war. However, I think the approach misses some points. I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that Russia is not an honest broker. We've seen, they've agreed to a million things, and they break it constantly. One of them being that they would never invade Ukraine. So I think he has to approach this with a little bit of more skepticism when trying to negotiate with Putin. And I think he did see some of that. Remember, he was just at the Vatican meeting with Zelensky. He put out a post about it after saying, why is Putin still hitting these civilian areas? Maybe he's trying to take me for a ride. So I think he is starting to see that a little more, because he wants to bring peace, but the Russians have clearly not been honest brokers here. They declared a ceasefire, for example, for Easter. They broke it almost immediately. So again, I think as this moves forward, he's realizing more that the Russians are not honest brokers right now, and I think we need to shift the conversation to approaching this from getting peace. I think peace has to be brought with the West and Ukraine being in a position of strength. You can't just it's not as simple as just you're making concessions, but then what are you getting in return? What's going to stop, without a security guarantee, for example, what's going to stop Russia from just invading again in a year, regrouping and coming back? In terms of alliances, I would say, continue shoring up that relationship with Poland and the Baltics. They're clear-eyed on the threat of Russian tyranny, and generally in the West in general. I hear them speaking up more about China now. That's hard. You don't hear that as much in Europe, but we are hearing it more from our Eastern and Central European allies. Because China's been involved in the war. They've been helping supply Russia, and they've been helping get around sanctions and things like that. So I'd say shore up those relationships with the allies that are proving themselves to be reliable allies, and kind of steer clear of antagonizing them on Twitter.
All right, I'm sorry, Ed. I gotta push back a little bit. Name names. Do me a favor here. Let's name names. I want to know, who are these model ally countries out there? Because it's one thing to kind of set a rule, right? Which I'm all about, setting rules that we can live by. But okay, here's the rule. Poland, they're great. They're a model example of an ally. What other countries do you see, like Japan, Taiwan, India? Like, we're hearing all these names pop up right now in foreign policy. Right. Are any of these other countries in the same spirit of a Poland? Are they model allies? Are there other countries I didn't mention? What do you think?
Right. Well, certainly. To name a few, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they're really with the Polish on this. Japan is a vital ally. Japan, and we're seeing the threat of China bring Japan and South Korea together in a way that many thought would never happen, because they're rallying around this vital goal of preventing Chinese aggression. They're really worried about China invading Taiwan. We need to strengthen those alliances, with both militarily and, frankly, with trade as well. We don't want to scare them off and create too much uncertainty. I'd say with the trade, make a deal as soon as you can. If that gets us a better deal, I think that's great, but let's get there. But no, Japan and South Korea are excellent examples. Taiwan is an excellent example. Although I think Taiwan needs to spend a little bit more in defense, considering what's going on or what could happen. We see China doing a massive military buildup right now. The Philippines are going to be emerging as a continued stronger ally. They're being antagonized by China. And oftentimes they're just trying to fish, and China's like kind of coming and screwing with that. So those are some examples that I would think of. Australia probably as things heat up in the Pacific. But yeah, I'd say they're proving themselves, and I think that they're going to continue to want to strengthen their alliance with us as the threat of China and just generally the threat of authoritarians around the world are growing. The threat is growing, I should say. And I think that's going to continue to rally them to want stronger relationships with the U.S.
You said they're just trying to fish, and then they're just going after him. It made me think of my daughter's one of her favorite movies, Moana. Sounds like they're just out there trying to fish, and Maui, the bad guy, is just he's going after him. Man, when you're a dad, you'd watch those movies. I'm not kidding, like daily, and they just stick in your head. I have all the Moana soundtrack. It's on loop in my head. Gotta love it, Ed. But do me a favor here. Let's answer, if you have an answer to this very tough and, dare I say, scary question, and that is, Ed, do you feel that with all these, these alliances that are starting to build out more, and you mentioned China strengthening their military, there's been a push, obviously, for America to do the same. You're seeing the turmoil in the Middle East. You're seeing the turmoil in Eastern Europe. You're seeing potential turmoil happening between India and Pakistan right now. Obviously, all that's been happening over in the Eastern Pacific with China, Taiwan. I mean, the world right now feels like it's a powder keg. Are we at a point that we're kind of in this Cold War 2.0?
I believe we are in a Cold War 2.0 with China already. I certainly think, I know that the Chinese feel that way. I think I hope that our leaders here in America can recognize that, because to deal with the threat, you have to understand it, or at least acknowledge it. Oftentimes, you still saw the Biden administration referring to China as a competitor instead of an adversary, and I think that's naive. I think what we're seeing now is the post-World War II, we saw a level of relative peace that, honestly, for most of world history, we didn't have. And I think right now you're starting to see the world's authoritarians, the world's autocrats start to test those boundaries. Russia invaded Ukraine was a big breaking of those norms, and I think it was a big part of what triggered it was the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think that the reason that they're testing it is they're starting to doubt the West's resolve, and we want to restore that deterrence to stop this from spiraling out of control around the world, because we do see the world's authoritarians testing the waters, and that can get dangerous very quickly.
So I want to pose this question to you. So Bill Buckley, William Buckley, for those playing along in the home game, very prominent conservative thinker back from the late 20th century. I actually had his nephew on the show, William F. Buckley O'Reilly, here on the show from the Federalist Party of America. So there you go, folks. There's a fun fact. But back during the Cold War, the argument from the senior Buckley was that, listen, libertarians, non-interventionists, I hear you. Actually, you're right? You're right. We should be reducing the size, scope, and scale of government. I agree with you. But there is this country out there, big, scary country called the Soviet Union. And hey, we're in this Cold War. And in order to actually compete and maintain world peace, we have to create this large federal leviathan. We have to be able to fight fire with fire. And once we eliminate this threat, then I'm on board. Then we will go towards Libertopia. Didn't happen, Ed. And you fast forward to where we are today. I don't know. I'm just looking around. I see it is Russia, just different name, right? No longer the Soviet Union. But I'm seeing other countries across the globe, the ones we've mentioned here, during the episode, who they're big bullies on the street too. So I guess the question I'm trying to ask here, Ed, is there ever a moment when, and I'm not saying you or any of this persuasion of thought, but more of a neoconservative peace through strength, bully pulpit, like call it what you will. But is there ever a time when we see America taking a step back, not from influence, but from being this world's policeman, right? And I've had many a conversation, many a debate here on the show. Abdullah Hayek, Kyle Moran, we've dug into this and we've had some good
Kyle's
chats.
a good friend of mine. We went to school together, actually.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Well, yes. And by the way, go check out that episode. I think we had a really good, good back and forth. But this question's a little bit different because I heard well, in past tense, I wasn't alive when William F. Buckley was saying this. I did talk to his nephew though. I did say that. But like, with that being said, like, we heard this narrative of the libertarians are right. The small, constitutionalist conservatives, they're right. We just can't do it yet. Will there ever be a time from that type of perspective that we can say, hey, all right, we're going to take a step back, and that's okay?
Well, I will say this, one of the best things one of the things that allowed us to slash the military budget was actually from building up our military and winning the Cold War. Peace dividends were real. We were able to slash our defense spending after the Cold War because the 90s were just, everything seemed like it was, hey, maybe we really, for a moment, it seemed like the end of history, as they said. It didn't work out. It didn't, of course, happen the way some people thought it would happen more long term, but military spending today is still vastly lower than it was during the Cold War, and it was vastly slashed, particularly in the 90s. So I think the whole thing for me here is, at the end of the day, the goal is peace, and I believe the best way to achieve peace is through deterrence, and that's why I think America needs to continue to, as Trump has a line that I actually really like, and he says, we want our military to be so strong that we don't have to use it. And I totally agree with that. The whole idea is like, make our adversaries know that they cannot screw with us or our allies. And that is the best way to have peace. So I think that's the best way to make sure that we're not having to send our, sons and daughters out to fight in a war. We don't want to get dragged into a war. And I think the best way to do that is to prevent war in the first place. And I think it would be a mistake to withdraw from the world, because I think it would risk, we certainly can't trust. I don't think the Europeans have it in them alone. I think we need to work with the ones that are the strongest allies. So if America withdraws from the world, I fear that we're going to see Russia and China starting to fill that gap. And that's not a world we want to live in. That's a world of more conflict, more war, and it's much more risky. And it will end up less prosperous for it. The relative peace that we've had in the last 75 years has brought us unprecedented prosperity. Free navigation of the seas, for example, something we really take for granted. The fact that there's not just like constant risk. And we saw the Houthis trying to do this for a little bit when they started attacking ships, and we saw inflation. Imagine that on steroids. We're just constantly there's no free navigation of the seas. We're not becoming prosperous off of international capitalism.
Ed, if you had to, I'm going to make you do this, and I'm sorry, but if you had to, in weighing the importance of American domestic policy with American foreign policy, which is more important and why?
Oh, I'd say they're equally important. I would give it a 50-50. I think at the end of the day, none of the domestic policy stuff matters if we don't have a national defense. If we can't, if we're not defending ourselves and we're having to be constantly at war, then we can't focus on the domestic issues. I think the relative peace that we've created has allowed us to focus more on domestic issues, which has been for the best. I think a withdrawal from the world and from foreign policy would be a mistake, and it would leave us in a situation where we can focus less on things like just improving quality of life. So I say 50-50. I mean, of course, domestic foreign policy allows you to focus on domestic policy. Interesting.
Because, and listen, this is no secret, I'm a libertarian at heart. Though the libertarians are all mad at me because they're libertarians. Because I don't drink the Kool-Aid, and I actually say this tastes funny. Hold on, don't drink the whole gallon. Oh, it's too late. But with that being said, right? Like I look at where we are today and our involvement in all these foreign conflicts overseas. And I just get nervous, man. I get nervous because I hear you. I hear that they should be equally important. But then I look at the very real pain and suffering that a lot of Americans are dealing with on a daily basis. And that's not even factoring in both the natural disasters as well as the other just random disasters like a train derailment in not Palestine, but East Palestine, Ohio. Right. And have we heard from that? No. Have we heard? Did Flint ever get their drinking water? Please, someone respond to me in the comments and let me know. They did? Okay, yes. Thank God. Because like we have those issues. We have the LA wildfires, the Maui wildfires, flower. Say that 10 times fast. The Maui wildfires. There we go. Not wildflowers. That'd be a picnic.
Right.
No, wildfires. You have the natural disasters down in South Carolina, North Carolina, in those hurricanes. Like, we see the very real damage that your American communities have been experiencing. And I mean, mind you, that's in the past, 2 calendar years. So for your average American who they live and die quite literally from our domestic policy. And this is the main argument I made with Abdullah when he was on the show, was I'm saying, listen, bro, I think you might be too focused on like, I get it. American foreign policy is important, but when I'm not saying you're sacrificing the foreign policy at the expense of the domestic policy, but from the perspective of the voter, when they see their politicians talking about, we're going to stand with Ukraine because they're the only democracy in the East, or we're going to fight against China. It's like, dude, I can't pay my bills. The road has a huge hole in it. Can you come fix this? Right? That's where folks are at. And my concern to Abdullah was, you're going to push people to the point where they're going to say, F it. Fine. America first. How about America only? Because that's what I need to care about right now. Like, I can control what I can control. And I know the audience is like, here he goes again. Because I've used this example a million times. But like, whenever I'd have my sales team and I'd have like my sales guy, you'd be like, oh my God, why did this sales guy not process this lead fast enough? It's going to hurt my commissions. Blah, blah, and he just like freaks out. I'm like, dude, David, chill. Control what you can control, right? Like do the things that you can control. And you apply that to policy. Americans are looking around and saying, dude, all I can control really is my local environment, right? I can know that I'm going to have, my vote 1 out of 2,000 for mayor versus 1 out of 2 million for my congressional representative, which is, then I'm 1 out of 45 million when it comes to voting for president, right? So like, you see your impact scale reduced. So naturally, it makes sense for people to start saying, I'm going to focus only on the things that I can see, touch, taste, smell, hear, which is in my immediate purview. And my concern is that in the pursuit of maintaining this comfortable lifestyle that we've established over the post-Cold War era, that we're going to end up creating unintentional, bigger hardships, because in the pursuit of maintaining the comfortability, we're fundamentally neglecting very real issues that the country is facing. Now, I'm using that as my final thoughts for today, but also I guess that is kind of framed in a question. So I'll let you do this, Ed, for your final thoughts today. Feel free to respond to me, but also feel free to bring us home, wrap this episode up with a nice, neat bow.
Absolutely. Well, I'd say this, and I hear you. I mean, these kitchen table issues are vital. I mean, we need to focus on them. And I think part of this is why I often get frustrated with the way our political leaders speak about these issues, because I think we need to do a better idea at explaining why we do the things we do in foreign policy. And it shouldn't just be because it's not charity. And I think that we need to remind people of that often. I think because at least it shouldn't be charity. America's foreign policy should always be in America's interests. I believe it's in America's interests to keep relative peace in the world, so we're not having to get dragged into conflicts later on. It's a deterrence, and I think not being dragged into conflicts more conflicts around the world that might break out as a result of failed deterrence. This allows us to focus more on domestic policy because we're not so busy getting dragged into something that's much worse than or much more expensive than what we're spending now for deterring that from happening in the first place. Those kitchen table issues are vital. We need to focus a lot, and this is why I love the conversation that we're having right now around better government efficiency, getting the bureaucracy out of things. I love that. We need government to be more efficient. We need it to be smaller, and we need to get back to letting the private sector take off, letting individuals decide. I'm all with you there, and I think capitalism, free markets, individual liberty. That's the best way that we can improve lives. Not more government.
Ed Tarnowski, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. The article was Poland is a model U.S. ally. Let's act like it. Found over at Real Clear World. Obviously, Ed, you are writing as a part of our good friends over at Young Voices. So do us a favor. Where can folks go ahead, follow you if they want to learn more, check out some more of your work, but also if they want to continue the conversation, social media links?
Absolutely. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Ed Tarnowski. You can also find me on Young Voices website under the talent section. But no, it was a pleasure to be on today. I had so much fun with the conversation. I'd love to come back anytime.
Absolutely, my friend. And thank you for joining us. And by the way, audience, thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm pretty sure you all got some value from today's episode. So please do me a solid and also do Ed a solid. And that is give today's episode a share when you do tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and over on Instagram. Also, the Brian Nichols Show is both an audio podcast as well as a show that is in video format. So if you want to check out the show in video, head over to YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook. Just do me a favor. If you're heading over to Rumble and Twitter and Facebook, hit that little notification bell because we do air our episodes live during the week. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. I usually start the live stream around like 8:30 or so. So go ahead, get your favorite beverage, grab a snack. Go ahead, watch that on your favorite smart TV. Remember, you can put on like Rumble and stuff onto the smart TVs now. So go sit 9 p.m., catch an episode of the Brian Nichols Show for 30 or so minutes. And by the way, you would be joining the tens of thousands of other folks who are doing the exact same thing. So one more time, Brian Nichols Show is where you can find us for your video content. For the audio content, yes, I like to listen to my podcast on the go. I know lots of folks do as well. So head over to your favorite podcast catcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever it may be. Hit subscribe to the Brian Nichols Show. And by the way, that is the only place you can find all 900 and I think 60 plus other episodes of the show dating back to 2018. We used to be one of those shows, Ed, that was a libertarian show with libertarians talking about why it was great to be libertarians. And I said, ooh, that's a little goofball. We actually need to talk about how we can bring our ideas to your average person, show that we can solve the problems they see in their real life. And I don't know, meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. So with that being said, you want to check out any of those past episodes, head over to the archives or just check us out at briannicholsshow.com. And don't forget, if you enjoy the Brian Nichols Show and you want to support the show, well, support the folks who've been over my shoulder here throughout this episode. These are our amazing sponsors here of the program: Cardio Miracle, Ebles, CBD, Liquid Freedom Energy Tea, Blood of Tyrants Wine. Or if you want to go ahead and get some awesome swag, scan these QR codes to the shop. You can get our Good Ideas Don't Require Force snapbacks. We have t-shirts. We have coffee cups. You can see my coffee cup, kind of. See, and my little coffee cup and stuff right here. My buddy Dorian made me this as a little Javier Malay with his chainsaw.
Oh, that is awesome.
Can't get that in the store yet, Ed. I might need to do that as a special order for my my buddy Dorian. No, if you want to go ahead, get some good swag here, Ed. This is for you, right? Use code TBNS there for the shop. I think you'll get 10% off. Yeah, something like that. But anyways, Ed, this has been a great conversation. Any final words before we wrap things up today?
I think we about covered it, but thank you again for having me on. And I have an article on Malay, so maybe we can talk about that one soon. I only have good things to say. So
there we go. I love it, my libertarian hero. You got nothing but good things to say. I hear a part 2 conversation coming up here real soon. Right, there you go. I love it. All right. So put that in the archives there, folks. We will be having a conversation, deep dive into Javier Malay. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single time we have one of those conversations. Hit your news feed, hit your podcast. What are those things called? Podcast feeds, your YouTube homepage. I don't know. Just do me a favor. Don't forget to subscribe. And with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Ed Tarnowski. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.